Good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of Center for Private Sector Engagement, CPSC, STPI, I, Zainab Mumtaz Baloch, welcome you to today's webinar titled Foreign Investment and Cross-Border Trade in Pakistan. Before we start off with today's session, there are a few housekeeping rules. May I please request our speakers to keep their microphones off when they're not speaking to ensure good audio quality for everyone. Speakers are also encouraged to switch on their cameras, especially when they're speaking, to ensure good, if the network allows to do that without any disruptions. The webinar will be recorded and shared later for your kind reference. You are welcome to revisit the discussion later and feel free to share it with your network. We also invite questions from our audience and colleagues at the end or as the session goes. You may please feel free to write them in the chat box or in the Q&A box on the right side. Please have the chat box open in the right side in the chat window. In another window, or you may also indicate that you want to speak by choosing the raise hand option at the right side on the right side of the chat window. The session is going to be bilingual, and you may speak in both Urdu or English language as per your convenience. Today's session is being moderated by Mr. Abdullah Khaled, Project Coordinator, Center for Private Sector Engagement, STPI. Now I hand over the session to him so we may officially begin with the proceedings. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Zainab. I welcome all my esteemed panelists. Before we start, I would like to introduce our panelists to the audience. Today, we are being joined by Dr. Osama Hassan Khan, who is the Head of Policy Research Unit at FPCCI. We are also being joined by Dr. Hassan Daud Bhatt. He is the former Chief Executive Officer of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Board of Investment and Trade. We're also joined by Dr. Miraj ul Haq, who is Assistant Professor at International Islamic University, Islamabad. And we are also joined by Mr. Muhammad Akbar, Senior Joint Director, Economic Policy Review Department, State Bank of Pakistan. So to start off today's webinar, it's a very interesting topic, keeping in view the current pressing time. When we talk about foreign investment and cross-border trade in Pakistan, foreign investment has been very crucial for the growth of the economy. If we can go a bit back in 2022, despite the external and internal economic challenges, the Pakistan posts a growth of 6.1 in the real GDP. Despite this remarkable post-COVID growth, Pakistan investment to GDP ratio is quite low in the region, which has been around 15% for a decade. So the propensity to invest reflects growth where Pakistan has consistently low investment rate that limits its economic potential and further investment from foreign sector. Under the prevailing economic situation where high inflation disrupted the trade and supply chain and uncertainty in the market, which has badly affected the business confidence of the business community. Despite this fact, the rise in the inflation has also been creating hurdles for the business community. It has been observed that the rise in inflation from 38% in May 2023 as compared to 13.8 in May 2022 affected the production cost and export. We don't know that the inflationary pressure has not eased out, despite the fact the State Bank of Pakistan has impacted the business environment adversely, has been supporting to create a passage where business community can survive, prevail, and flourish. The monetary restrictions and the fiscal consolidation to balance the economy internally and externally has failed to attract foreign investors, which has slowed down the economic activities of domestic manufacturers. And by reducing the production capacity of the industry due to supply chain disruption and recessionary pressure, large-scale manufacturing, including the SMEs, have also shrunken, impacting foreign investment and cross-border trade. So if you can look into the trade balance no doubt has improved as the export and import have decreased by 13.6% and 23% respectively between during the July and April for the fiscal year 2023, which is the outcome of the demand management strategy. No doubt policy measures taken by the government such as high tariff, high exchange rate, and other import restrictions make importing input difficult and cost effective. So in view of the current political and economic situation, the country is already facing a shortage of external liquidity as the foreign exchange reserves are falling, which no doubt triggers mistrust among the investors and exporters from the industry sector. So in the prevailing political circumstances, it has been seen that the market uncertainty, high interest rate, logistics and infrastructure and financial services are um, unsupportive conditions for the investor. Uh, to have a sustainable pattern, export-led growth is crucial while developing strategies for building the trust of foreign investors and strengthening the export that makes our exports more competitive in the international market. In context of this background, we'll be talking with our experts from the private sector, from the public sector, from the developmental sector to guide us how we can improve not just the policy agenda, but also come up with staunch recommendation which can be forwarded to the government of Pakistan for improving the foreign investment and also the cross-border trade in Pakistan. To start off with today's discussion, I'll be requesting Dr. Mohammed Osama to reflect and to share his remarks on what are the key challenges being faced by the private sector while engaging in cross-border trade and attracting foreign investment. So what support private sector is providing to boost the foreign investment?
Assalamu alaikum.
Ji,
Am I audible?
you're audible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdullah Sahab, for the introduction, for the kind introduction. Let me first tell you guys something about the Policy Advisory Board. I'm basically Dr. Usama, Head of Policy Research Unit of FPCCI. FPCCI basically established the Policy Advisory Board in 2021 with an aim to provide research-based policy input and formalize business community suggestion to the government of Pakistan, to various departments, provincial authorities, state bank, and others. So let me come on the agenda of the today's webinar. Basically, there are two things which we have to talk about today. First is the cross-border trade. I would first wanted to add few things about the cross-border trade. Basically, trade mainly evolved from the regions, and then as the growth perspectives are there, then we can have trade partners in far-reaching regions, for example. But the problem with the Pakistan is that we couldn't make much in terms of our regional trade because of the border tensions, because of the many other issues with Afghanistan, with Iran, with India. Only China is open for us, and you know that the trade balance is still on the Chinese side, favoring the Chinese side, not the Pakistan. But yeah, there's a hope and there's much to do. So let's talk about the challenges which business community is facing on the cross-border trade. Uh, Let me talk about the Central Asian region. Uh, we all know that the Central Asian region is classified as a non-traditional market by the Ministry of Commerce, and they are trying hard to get access in that market. It is very lucrative from the business perspective. Private sector also believes the same. But issue is that the trade routes are not, viable. And for example, if we talk about the Chinese route, then there's an issue that we most of the time we cannot get the reverse load, and that's the reason, that's why it becomes expensive for the traders or for the business community to use that route. If you talk about the Afghanistan, but the issue and the conditions from the Afghan authorities are hurdlesome, making trade difficult for the Pakistani counterparts. Let me talk about few things. First, the cargo service provided in Pakistan offer load of 33 metric ton for the transportation, whereas Afghanistan only allows only 22 metric tons. So we have to, consignments need to be divided in accordingly to comply these requirements. Another issue that has been, raised by the business community over and again is related to cross stuffing. Afghan authorities warned Pakistani businessmen and others as well uh, to cross stuff their containers. And this is again the hurdle for the business community, because the quality, packaging, everything deteriorates because of this condition. We welcome the recently issued SRO 642 by the Ministry of Commerce for the barter trade with Afghanistan, Iran, and Russia. So we and business community and specifically FPCCI have been struggling for the same for last many years, and we really welcome. But some measures in the budget, for example, the broadening of the definition of smuggling practices, provincial levies, and Sadar force have been proposed to be added in the list of government agencies mandated to assess custom and anti-smuggling operation in KPK and Balochistan. So business community believe that there is another layer of the check and balance, and the smuggling will not be curbed by this, but another layer for the bribes and for the under the table operations. So this is again this will raise our ease of doing our cost of doing business. Let me talk about the reasons for the uh, uh, foreign investment, why we have been on the lower side as compared to our peer countries in terms of foreign investments. So the foremost thing come in everyone's mind is the political instability. We all know that the political instability and the frequent regime switches are making difficult for the investors to come and predict the policies and the regime of the government, the stance of the government. If we talk about the taxation, there are around 27 and on average 27 taxes levied by different federal and provincial authorities. So if I have to do business in Pakistan, then I have to face the 27 authorities, and the compliance is adding another cost. Similarly, there are the claims that the cascading principle in the national tariff policy have been, violated. And after each budgetary proposal, budgetary sessions, we used to receive the input from the business community regarding how cascading is being violated. Like raw materials are on charged on the higher side, are facing the higher custom duties, whereas intermediate goods are at the zero or the low, low custom duties. So for all these things are making the investment difficult. Another thing I would like to mention is that restriction on profit repatriation as well as import restriction. Uh, there is an estimate that around 60% of our exports are based on imported raw material. I mean, if I produce the goods value good with a value of $100, then I have to import on average uh, good with the value or the raw material with the value of $60. So when there are LC issues, when there are restriction on imports, when there are such measures, then how we can set up the manufacturing facility, or how we can promote our exports, and how we can attract the investment. So I believe that these things are problematic for attracting the investment. If we talk about the banks, so banks are lending heavily to the government. They don't have any interest to lend to the private sector. Only lending to the private sector is 32% of the total bank lending. uh, Private sector is doing their best. They are trying their own to B2B, to attract investments, to attract JVs at their own. We used to exchange the delegations frequently, but FPCCI recently also doing another task, is to matchmaking of the potential investors from all over the world, and um, you know matching them with the local counterparts. So we are about to launch a separate desk for it, and uh, we are trying to work hard for this matchmaking process, and then we can engage the government as well for all these things. So another issue I would like to highlight is that TDAP and the commercial section abroad. We are we have been listening it for long that commercial sections are not facilitating in a way they should facilitate our investors, our business community. So business communities of the view that commercial sections are of no use for them. So we should also think about that. Also, TDAP organizes different trade fairs but most of them are irrelevant for the business interests. So I think we should go for the revision of our policies. We should update our things accordingly. Thank you so much. That is it from my side. Thank you, Abdullah.
Thank you, Dr. Sab. You've rightly pointed. Uh, Rather than jumping into issues, I believe that we have to focus on capacity building, that is on both the private and the public sector side, particularly when it comes to those the commercial sections that you've highlighted. They have to come up with a staunch impact assessment of what needs to be done when it comes to trade fairs. And also, we have to focus on the regional connectivity for not just improving the overall cross-border trade. And even though, as just you've highlighted, the SRO that was issued a few days back, I believe that rather than going from good services, good versus good, we should have brought in the private sector. Private sector should have played a very pivotal role during the stakeholder engagement, where rather than focusing on barter system, particularly good to good, it should have been good versus services, and also on the payment method that should also have been looked into. So thank you very much. I'll be coming back to you again in the second round. Moving forward, I'll be requesting Dr. Hassan Daud Bhatt, who is serving as the Senior Policy Advisor at STPI, a former CEO of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Board of Investment and Trade, and having a very insightful knowledge on the cross-border trade when it comes to regional connectivity. So Dr. Saab, if you could highlight what specific measures and initiatives has Pakistan taken to attract foreign investment in recent years, and also if you could highlight what initiatives were considered during your tenure in KP, and are there any specific sectors that are particularly appealing to foreign investors?
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Abdullah, and it's good to see all my colleagues now and former. Usama, how are you doing? Kaise ho aap? You know, there's the list is very long on the challenges, but you know, for someone like me, long list of challenges is also and could be actually worked on with a long list of a mitigation strategy. So if we have a good mitigation strategy for all the challenges and headwinds, we can actually address them. So let me list down those challenges, the challenges that I had when I was working on cross-border trade, not just with Afghanistan, but also beyond. And then, of course, I will give you my recommendations where you can, and they would be in order of merit and also in order of chronological order in terms of short term, mid term, and long term. So I think the mechanism, and I'll start from the government agency. I think the challenges of the capacity and far too many frequent changes in the hierarchical structure and order. This is one challenge that, you know, you just can't keep teaching and building capacity of people in TDAP, in border crossings. Similarly, and the least that we can start is on the attitude of people. I mean, building capacities with numbers is separate. Building attitude is important because it's a service. This cross-border trade is like services industry, and it has to be dealt as such and perhaps approached in a similar manner. Similarly, हमारी problem ये भी है that we look at things one size fit all. And we want to transform overnight, which will not happen. It's in the past 70 years, there have been several claims of increasing trade. Every new government comes and makes those trade. It's in the manifesto of each government. They like in each government and political parties manifesto, you have these tall claims around expansion of tax base. And of course its collection, and of course the other is that increasing trade. If you look at the economic outreach potential of Pakistan, just with Afghanistan as a matter of fact, there's a huge potential vis-a-vis not just the agri-based project, but also some equipment, manufacturing goods that we produce, even food and beverages that we work on. And then, of course, with European countries and of course US, which are our major trading partners, our exports have actually being limited to certain areas, and we are not expanding, and we are not even adding value to that. And how could this happen if your understanding of the PTAs and FTAs, which are the basic instrument for increasing trade, you do not have that? And even your negotiations of PTA and FTAs are very weak, because in bureaucracy, as I said, A is frequent changes, and the other is that the organizations which are responsible for doing this have an internal debate at any given time. So, for example, the industries have another way of looking at trade and export. The Commerce Ministry has it in a different way. TDAP looks at it in a different way. And also the narrative that is being built around Pakistan in terms of its potential to embrace investment and do export is not as good as it should be. And there, again, people like us who have been responsible for this has to, I mean, I take that blame also. Similarly, each year, Abdullah, we've been speaking about increasing the number of border crossings. We have spoken about तोरखम 4 साल तो मैं केपी में लगा के आ गया हूं, और वो तोरखम बॉर्डर की एक्सपेंशन नहीं हो सकी. I don't know what are we building there. Something unique perhaps. Because अगर नॉर्मल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ही डेवलप करना है और ऑप्टिकल फाइबर कनेक्टिविटी देनी है, तो फिर उसके लिए तो इतनी आपको जरूरत नहीं. अब्दुल्ला, मुझे रोक देना जब तुम्हारा टाइम पूरा हो जाए, because this topic is very dear to me and I can keep speaking for. Then again, and I'll go to China because of my previous engagement with CPEC, and now also I'll speak about that also. But let me just focus on Afghanistan now. So, I mean, in human method of trade and of course people-to-people interaction, border crossings is practically inhuman. और अगर आप उसको improve नहीं करेंगे as a first step, as a stepping stone, then फिर आपने क्या करना? अच्छा, जब आपका ये हो गया, and when you are through with the Afghan border and trade, let us talk about China border and trade. आपने वहां पर 313 ट्रेड टैरिफ लाइंस थी in Afghanistan. आप एक भी एक्सप्लॉइट नहीं कर सके, डिस्पाइट द फैक्ट कि आपके पास 5 साल का लेवरेज था. And the Chinese authorities had given us this time for us to improve our trade relationship with the business community B2B there. And then perhaps the Chinese would come, because when Chinese come, तो वो economy of scale में आपको मारते हैं. तो आपने वहां पर भी benefit नहीं किया. I have addressed, spoken at, and heard so many discussions around FTA with China. और फिर उसके बाद ये है कि आपकी जो private sector bodies हैं, they remain submissive, I would say, if I'm allowed to be candid, in terms of expanding trade. आप पाक अफगान जो चेंबर है उनकी कैपेसिटी, आपकी पाकिस्तान चाइना चेंबर अगर कोई एग्जिस्ट करता है जो कि पर से है on both sides, मैं समझता हूँ कि बिल्कुल वो उनके पास ना, और उनके पास क्या R&D की कैपेसिटी है टू अंडरस्टैंड कि कहाँ पर आपने ट्रेड और बिजनेस कैपेसिटी बढ़ाना. So, and then एक तरफ गवर्नमेंट के challenges हैं, then these private bodies, and then of course the infrastructure, extremely poor infrastructure. VBOC आपका कनेक्शन होती नहीं है, ऑप्टिकल फाइबर आपकी ले नहीं हुई, आप 4G आपका इस्लामाबाद में खत्म हो जाता है, तो आप तोरखम बॉर्डर का आप छोड़ भी दें. फिर जरा सी कोई नेचुरल कैलामिटी आए तो आप बिल्कुल स्टक हो जाते हैं. कोई भी जरा सा सिक्योरिटी रिलेटेड इंसिडेंट हो तो आपको महीने तक ट्रेड रुक जाता है. So these are the challenges which we have. I will not speak about e-commerce because generally today discussion was on cross-border trade, so I'll focus on that. अच्छा, ये सारे हमारे challenges हैं, but of course these challenges, if you compare them with the opportunity, तो वो कहीं भी नहीं आते, क्योंकि इन challenges को address किया जा सकता है by just few concerted effort और body supra body type बनाने की जगह वो लोग जो actually इसमें involve है वो करें. And let's not talk about foreign direct investment for a moment, and let's focus ourselves around trade, export and local investment. और इसका इतना ज्यादा पोटेंशियल है हमारे पास, एसएमई सेक्टर की ग्रोथ की पॉसिबिलिटीज हैं जो कि एक्सपोर्ट करती है टू अफगानिस्तान, ताजिकिस्तान, सम लिजिट सम नॉट टू लिजिट। तो ये तमाम चीजें अगर आप अपने फोकस में रखें तो फिर अब आपने करना क्या है? सो गोइंग फॉरवर्ड आई थिंक द वेज आर वेरी सिंपल। आई सी डॉक्टर उसामा हियर एंड आई अर्ज FPCCI to take the lead on this discussion, because ये आपके जो छोटे छोटे दूसरे चेम्बर्स हैं, सिटी, डिस्ट्रिक्ट, प्रोविंस बेस्ड, वो उस तरह नहीं, उनका बहुत ही विजन जो है मायोपिक होता है, एंड दे concentrate on their own interest, whereas FPCCI is a larger body, and of course SGPI and FPCCI can join hands to do this. अब इसके अंदर आपने क्या करना है? इसके अंदर आपने करना ये है कि immediately आप and through a better monitoring, evaluation and perhaps better investment both from the private side and public side, आप अपने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को करें। आपके पास जितनी भी बॉर्डर क्रॉसिंग है, मजीद नहीं बढ़ाना चाहते ना बनाए। आई ट्राइड कि गुलाम खान, अंगूर अड्डा और बाकी जो केपी के साथ आपके बॉर्डर हैं वो इंक्रीज हो जाए, इम्प्रूव हो जाए, लेकिन नहीं हो सकता। सो लेट्स सी जो आपके एग्जिस्टिंग है, तोरखम हो गया, या चाइना के साथ आपके अलॉन्ग विद काशगर बॉर्डर है, आपके पास ईरान के साथ जो बॉर्डर है, और इवन योर पोर्ट्स कैपेसिटी, इन सब को बढ़ाएं। क्योंकि अगर आपने अपनी इकोनॉमी को ग्रो करनी है तो आपकी पोर्ट पे हैंडलिंग भी बेहतर होनी चाहिए, आपकी बॉर्डर क्रॉसिंग की हैंडलिंग बेहतर होनी चाहिए। देयर इज नो सेकंड थॉट ऑन दिस आइडिया, बिकॉज अगर वो नहीं होगी तो आपका एक्सपोर्ट ग्रो नहीं करेगा, एक्सपोर्ट नहीं ग्रो करेगा तो ट्रेड ग्रो नहीं करेगा, ट्रेड ग्रो नहीं करेगा तो आप कभी भी इकोनॉमी आपकी ग्रो नहीं कर देगी, यही बूम और बस साइकिल चलती रहेगी। तो सबसे पहले, जिस तरह मैंने कहा, आप अपना इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इंप्रूव करें। दूसरा, आप वहां पर जो ह्यूमन रिसोर्स लाते हैं वो सिलेक्टेड हो, वो अंडर रिव्यू हो, और उनकी सिलेक्शन से पहले उनके देख लें कि ना सिर्फ उनकी कैपेसिटी और नॉलेज अच्छी हो, तीसरा ये कि उनके एटीट्यूड और एप्टीट्यूड हो। थर्डली, आपने ये करना है कि आपने डिजिटली कनेक्ट करना है। आपने वन विंडो और ईज ऑफ डूइंग बना दिया। आई थिंक वी हैव डन गुड वर्क एज फार एज पाकिस्तान सिंगल विंडो इज कंसर्न, बट आई थिंक वी कुड हैव डन मच बेटर। और उसके लिए आपको आई थिंक FPCCI और भी हमारे जो कॉलीग्स हैं SGPI में भी, आई थिंक वी कैन step forward and help the government in achieving this, because वहाँ पे willingness है to do this. डिजिटाइजेशन से ना सिर्फ आपकी एफिशिएंसी बढ़ेगी बल्कि आपकी करप्शन भी अंडर कंट्रोल आएगी। और मैं जब वन विंडो कहता हूं तो वो टिपिकल वन विंडो प्लस मल्टीप्लाई बाय 10 विंडोज नहीं कह रहा, मैं एक सिंगल विंडो की बात कर रहा हूं जो कि आपकी सिर्फ क्रॉस बॉर्डर ट्रेड के साथ हो और कनेक्टेड हो आपकी बॉर्डर पोस्ट के साथ, ताकि, क्योंकि हमारे पास तो डेटा कलेक्शन भी बड़ी मुश्किल है कि आप कर सकें कि आज कितना ट्रेड हुआ है क्रॉस बॉर्डर, उसमें से डेटा जो होता है बड़ा डाइवर्स। लास्ट जो आपने चीज करनी है वो, और जब मैंने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बात की उसमें रोड कनेक्टिविटी विद दीज बॉर्डर क्रॉसिंग बहुत, लास्ट जो मैं बहुत ज्यादा फोकस अभी भी अपनी रिसर्च में कर रहा हूँ और अभी हाईलाइट भी करना चाहूंगा, वो ये है कि आप अपनी एक कॉबॉय स्टाइल सिक्योरिटी सिस्टम को हटाकर आई थिंक आप अपनी डिजिटल सिक्योरिटी मैकेनिज्म लाएं, जहां पर आपका रिएक्शन टाइम कम हो और उसका इम्पैक्ट ज्यादा हो। क्योंकि आपने अगर इम्पैक्ट, क्योंकि अभी हमारा जो सिक्योरिटी का मैकेनिज्म है उसका विजुअल्स बहुत खराब है एज फार एज ट्रेड एंड इन्वेस्टमेंट इज कंसर्न। उसका इम्पैक्ट क्या है ये हम विल लीव इट टू दिस, बट उसके विजुअल्स जरा अच्छे नहीं। तो आई थिंक डिजिटाइजेशन वहां पे भी ला सकते हैं। और लास्ट बट नॉट द लीस्ट, आपके जितने भी बॉडीज हैं जिसमें SGPI है, FPCCI, बिजनेस चेम्बर है, क्रॉस बॉर्डर अथॉरिटीज हैं इंक्लूडिंग TDAP है, जब भी आप, फॉर एग्जांपल मैं अपना चैलेंज आपको बता सकता हूँ एक्सपो दुबई का, आई मीन ह्यूज चैलेंज, कोऑर्डिनेशन, बहुत लास्ट मिनट में आपने इन्वेस्टमेंट और ट्रेड को डाला, उससे पहले आप टूरिज्म पे फोकस कर रहे थे। तो आई थिंक all this needs a lot of concerted effort, all this needs lot of support from the government, hand holding by agencies and bodies like us, and lastly a willingness on part of everyone who's involved, scholars, academians, businessmen, ताकि इसका हम रिजल्ट दे सकें। So for this seminar, I think I'll leave it to this.
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू वेरी मच। आपने काफ़ी सारी चीज़ें हाईलाइट तो कर दी हैं और हमारे लिए होमवर्क भी बढ़ा दिया आपने। नो डाउट आपने मजा फरमाया कि देयर आर थिंग्स दैट नीड टू बी लुक्ड इनटू व्हेन इट कम्स टू क्रॉस बॉर्डर ट्रेड। कीपिंग इन व्यू हम पाकिस्तान सिंगल विंडो के साथ काम कर रहे हैं एंड no doubt Pakistan single window is a very great initiative by the government of Pakistan, particularly by the customs. They are trying to improve the overall cross-border trade by digitalizing it. Not just इनको बिल्कुल border points पे भी लेके जाया जा रहा है। Yesterday we were in conversation on Afghanistan-Pakistan trade, आप भी उसका हिस्सा थे। No doubt हमें इस वक्त बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है इस चीज़ को देखने की कि हम not only the existing जो the border points हैं उनकी capacities enhance करें, इंक्लूडिंग द कम्युनिटीज जो वहाँ पर हैं उनको सपोर्ट करें, क्योंकि जब तक हम ह्यूमन रिसोर्स पे काम नहीं करेंगे we won't be able to achieve anything. Even the foreign investment जब हम उसकी बात कर रहे हैं, that's also linked to it. So thank you very much for your kind remarks. I'll be coming back to you again shortly. Moving forward, I'll be requesting Dr. Miraj Ul Haq Sahab. He's an assistant professor from International Islamic University. So being an from the academia, what do you think, what role does government policy and regulations play in attracting foreign investment and also in facilitating cross-border trade? Are there any specific policy measures that have been proven effective in this regard? Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, Abdullah, for giving me this opportunity, and let me first express my deep sense of appreciation to STBIT for giving me this opportunity. It's my pleasure and great honors to participate in this webinar entitled Foreign Investment in Cross-Border Trade. As we know, global economies are growing more and more interdependent. That globalization, integrations, trade openness, this push the economy towards dependencies and across the global economies. Dependencies across the global economies are increasing. Like other economies, Pakistan economies, we have also trade, business, and economic ties across the globe. But unfortunately, we haven't harnessed the potential again of this globalized regime and this integrated regime. So, currently, you know that if we take historical data, persistently we are running our economy with a huge trade deficit, and this trade deficit has obvious consequences to the economy. That our foreign exchange reserve, is always under pressures, and that under pressure of this foreign exchange economy, then again push the economy to external debt and debt threats. As far as trade is concerned, how we can harvest the potential gain of this integrated and this globalized regime? I think matters should be addressed on both export and import front. In export front, our per unit cost is very high. We can't compete in the international market with other competitor economies and regional economies because we are facing security crisis, we are facing civil energy crisis, at the same time we are facing political instability and inconsistency in public policies. These problems and challenges increase our per unit cost, and this reduce capacity of our production units. Similarly, with these challenges, this security and then civil energy crisis, political instability, and inconsistency in public policy, we haven't attract foreign direct investment, and even we haven't encourage investment. And that's why the flow of dollar is very low compared to outflow of dollar. And the obvious consequences currently the prevailing situation is we are facing this debt issues, and we are facing many challenges. I think to overcome these challenges, to attract foreign direct investment and to encourage domestic investment and to overcome this huge trade deficit. Matter should be addressed on both export and import front. And I think government and state of Pakistan should go beyond out of the box. Measures should be taken. Export front, I think we have to work on we have to develop capacity of our domestic production units, and we have to work on export diversification. We have to hunt new market for our export. Why we are still focusing on traditional market? Why we haven't developed trade relations with the neighbor countries, even Afghanistan, Iran, even India, and many other region countries? We haven't developed trade ties. In FDI side, I think matter should be addressed because we know that if an economy can increase and enhance absorption capacity, then foreign direct investment can attract and domestic investment should encourage. We claim that we are passing through demographic dividend working age population at more than 65%. And you know that developed economies, they are running short of labor, short of young populations. This is one potential in Pakistan economy, but unfortunately, this is just we haven't provide skill, education, and experience to this young populations, and we haven't developed absorption capacity. First, we have to work, we have to develop absorption capacity. And for this absorption capacity, we work on infrastructure development. We work on this working age population, not just we have convert this labor into human capital. And we work on energy crisis, and we also work on, we have to work on this single window operations, digitalizations. All these measures should increase, enhance absorption capacity, and this once we develop our absorption capacity, then we can attract foreign direct investment and we can encourage domestic investment. I think government and public-private grant collaborations is the most feasible way. And recently, this special investment presentation council and single window operations under the economic revival plan of the government. I think this is the one feasible way to overcome these challenges, and we can develop, enhance absorption capacity. We must have to work on absorption capacity. For the absorption capacity, once again, I can repeat, we have to work on digitalization. We have to develop human capital attributes of our working age population. We have to work on institutional governance to facilitate procedure, to make simple procedures, and we have to work on energy crisis. Once we develop this absorption capacity, then I think we can attract foreign direct investment. We can encourage domestic investment. And whatever challenges that huge trade deficit, and mean this trade deficit, when we are facing a huge fiscal debt, a huge trade deficit we are facing, this is again huge obvious consequences for the economies that we are in a trade. Our foreign exchange reserve is under pressures most of the time. We are in IMF program. All these challenges we can overcome and we can get rid of these challenges once we work on export and once we work on environment to create conducive environment for investment and to encourage domestic investment to attract foreign direct investment. So I think whatever questions and whatever queries put it here in simple, we have to work on absorption capacity, and by these absorption capacity, these energy crisis, security situations, and then infrastructures, development of infrastructures and digitalizations and single window operation. With these measures and with these policies, we can develop our absorption capacity. We can develop potentials of our domestic production units that we can export, we can increase export, and at the same time we can attract foreign direct investment and we can encourage domestic investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nihal sir. आपने बिल्कुल मजा फरमाया जी. There are multiple factors that have to be looked into. सबसे पहले तो I believe that the political instability has been the root cause of the economic instability, and it's a very good initiative by the government that they have formulated a special committee on the investment, which will be helpful in bringing more investment to the country, and it would.
Abdullah, can I say one thing?
Please, Dr. Saab.
अब्दुल्ला, पॉलिटिकल एनवायरनमेंट का ना ट्रेड पे नहीं इतना इम्पैक्ट होता, वरना तो जंग जहाँ पे जंगे होती हैं वहां पे भी ट्रेड होता है. पॉलिटिकल एनवायरनमेंट का इन्वेस्टमेंट पे इम्पैक्ट होता है, ट्रेड पे थोड़ा सा होता है, एक ओवरऑल मूड ऑफ द बिजनेस वैसा होता है, लेकिन उससे ज्यादा इम्पैक्ट होता है जब आप टारगेट्स देते हैं एफबीआर को कि जाओ आप जाएं और जाके लोगों से एट सर्टेन इंस्टेड ऑफ एक्सपेंडिंग बेस यू एक्सपेंड द नंबर्स, उसका ज्यादा इम्पैक्ट होता है एज अपोज टू कि आपका पॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन तो डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज में इवॉल्विंग एक चीज है और बड़ी अब सब्जेक्टिव हो गई है एज अ मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट.
बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं सर, बट देयर आर मल्टीपल फैक्टर्स, जैसा कि डॉक्टर मिराज साहब ने फरमाया कि कीपिंग इन व्यू, जैसा कि हम देखते हैं कि फैट ऑफ सेम भी निकले रिसेंटली, आईएमएफ के साथ हम लोग काम कर रहे हैं, नेगोशिएट कर रहे हैं टू गेट द 9th रिव्यू डन. सो आई बिलीव दैट पॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी हैज बीन हैम्परिंग दीस थिंग्स. आप बिल्कुल बजा फरमा रहे हैं कि इन्वेस्टमेंट का डायरेक्ट लिंक होता है विद द पॉलिटिकल स्टेबिलिटी और इंस्टेबिलिटी, बट इकोनॉमिक इंस्टेबिलिटी कीपिंग इन व्यू द करंट सिचुएशन आल्सो हैज बीन अ पार्ट ऑफ इट. Miraj sir, thank you very much, and Dr. Hassan sir, thank you very much for your point. Moving forward जी, मैं request करना चाहूँगा जी, हमारे साथ डॉक्टर Mr. मोहम्मद अकमल साहब हैं. He's a senior joint director at State Bank of Pakistan. Akmal साहब, I would request your kind guidance and remarks on the role that is being played by State Bank of Pakistan, not just in promoting and also facilitating the foreign investment in country. Over to you, Akmal sahab.
Thank you, Abdullah Saab, and Dr. Hassan and Osama and Dr. Miraj has already told us a lot of things, what is happening in the international trade and what is the importance of regional trade. I just take the advantage that what Hassan Saab has said that about the structure of the economy. He briefly highlighted about the structure, but I think the root cause of what is happening with Pakistan in the past 20-30 years, that our exports have not increased much, our investment is almost stagnant. So the reason is that the Pakistan is a consumption oriented society, and whatever investment comes into Pakistan, that mainly targets the consumption sector, and which is also evident from the stock of the FDI in various sectors of Pakistan. So and the other thing what happens then when the investment is not there, either it is foreign direct investment or the local investment in the exportable sectors, the supply of the products is limited, and that is why we see that the capacity to invest in the productive capacity, it is very limited in Pakistan, and we are losing the competitiveness as well as the low growth regime. So here I go on to the next the theme, that what is the role of the SBP in this regard. As we have seen over the years that as I have already said that the low investment and why the investment is low in the export oriented sectors One of them, one of these factors I've already explained, that the consumption-oriented society. And the second thing that I consider, that the Pakistan is, I mean, less diversified in terms of exports, and I mean the markets, and as well as the products. And that is also one of the major reasons. And the other thing that we should take into account, the low level of integration in the global value chain. Without global value chains, without integrated with the global value chains, it will be challenging for the Pakistan to achieve sustainable export-led growth. As we see that the import intensity of export is very high in Pakistan. If the imports are limited, and whatever the reason, exports are also, I mean, hindered. So the other reason that we can also discuss about the informal economy, as other participants have also discussed that about that, the informal economy and low financial services use. The financial use of financial services is linked with today, in today's world, is linked with the digitization of the economy, and the Pakistan's economic digitization is limited. So the other obstacle, which is the relatively higher entry cost while starting a new business in Pakistan. So all these factors are hampering the investment in Pakistan. So what is the role of the central bank? And we see the central bank, I think the central bank, after the amendment of 1956 Act, the main objective of the central bank is domestic price stability. And the secondary objective is the financial stability. However, another objective, the support government economic policies to foster development and fuller utilization resources. This is the objective that where it comes that SBP can help the other sectors of the economy to help to foster development. So in this, under this specific mandate, SBP plays a role in facilitating FDI, maybe not directly, but facilitating FDI in the country by formulating various policies, whether it is related to the monetary policy, prudent monetary policy, or it is exchange rate arrangements or other export procedures, or facilitating the exporters in the in payments, or facilitating investments through various trade credit channels. And the other thing that SBP has liberalized is foreign exchange regime over the years. So investors are allowed to bring in capital and repatriate their investment proceeds, subject to certain regulations and reporting requirements. But on the other hand, this has also, we have seen that the repatriation profit has become a very significant in past few years. As the firms come in Pakistan, invest in the consumption-oriented sectors, and then earn money and repatriate those profit, that ultimately brings pressure on the balance of payment. So because of the investment that is coming into the sectors, power sector, whether it is financial sector or it is FMCGs, so that actually later on helps, affects negatively to some extent to the balance of payment. In order to ensure the robust regulatory environment, SBP periodically reviews and revises foreign exchange regulations to align them with the international best practices. So SBP is playing its role in facilitating exporters, as well as FDI into the or foreign investment into the country, that through the digitization of export related process, through Pakistan's single window. SBP is also a very important and integral part of this whole process. Once this initiative is in practice.
I think we have lost Akmal Saab. जैसे ही दोबारा वो reconnect करते हैं तो we'll start from there again. For the second round, I'll be requesting my esteemed panelists for their remarks. Usama Saab, Dr. Saab, I'll come to you, keeping in view the overall discussion जो हम अभी लेके चल रहे हैं. मैं आपसे चाहूँगा आपकी रहनुमाई थोड़ा इस तरफ चाहेंगे कि why industries in Pakistan facing issues of unproduction or going towards shutdown, क्योंकि आप लोग इस वक्त being a part of FPCCI इन चीज़ों पे बड़ी गहरी नज़र आप लोगों की, and I want to see कि आप थोड़ा हमें ये भी बता सकें कि what support is needed by the industries to resolve this issue based on the current economic scenario.
थैंक यू अब्दुल्ला साहब. मैं इसमें दो चीज़ें बताना चाहूँगा जो करंट इकोनॉमिक सिनेरियो के हवाले से और इसके अलावा भी. अगर हम अपना टैक्स कंट्रीब्यूशन या जो हमारा जो जीडीपी में जो सेक्टोरल कंट्रीब्यूशन है उसको अगर हम देखें तो हम इंडस्ट्रीज़ का शेयर जीडीपी में अराउंड 18% रह गया है, बट टैक्सेस में इंडस्ट्रीज़ का शेयर अराउंड 60% है, 62%, 63%, समथिंग लाइक दैट. ऑन द अदर वे जब आप एग्रीकल्चर और सर्विसेज सेक्टर को देखते हैं तो उनकी कंट्रीब्यूशन जीडीपी में जो है उस हिसाब से उस पर टैक्सेशन नहीं है. सो आई एम ऑफ द व्यू कि इंडस्ट्रीज आर ओवरबर्डन विद द टैक्सेस एंड the formal sector. I'm talking about the formal sector. तो formal sector पे basically हम टैक्स लगाए जा रहे हैं rather than कि हम broadeningly टैक्स बेस की तरफ जाएं. ठीक है, तो ये एक सबसे बड़ा रीज़न है. आईएमएफ हम नेगोशिएशन में जाते हैं, आईएमएफ भी हमें एम्फेसिस करता है टैक्स मेजर्स लेने पे. हम इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस पे ज़्यादा फोकस करते हैं, इंडस्ट्री के ऊपर टैक्स लगा देते हैं या सेल टैक्स बढ़ा देते हैं. मैक्सिमम हम यही टूल्स इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं. तो बेसिकली इससे हो ये रहा है कि ओवर द ईयर्स इफ़ यू कैन सी दैट पाकिस्तान इज विटनेसिंग अ प्रीमेच्योर डी इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन. लाइक दुनिया भर में अगर हम देखें तो बांग्लादेश, इंडिया या बाकी कंट्रीज़ के एग्जांपल देखें तो डी इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन से पहले उनका जो इंडस्ट्रीज़ का शेयर जीडीपी में वो 25 to 30% तक गया है, बट हम जो है वो 20% तक भी नहीं पहुंचे उससे पहले ही हमारा इंडस्ट्रियल बेस जो है वो श्रिंक होने लगा. दिस इज़ द वन रीज़न कि टैक्स बर्डन जो है वो अलाइन नहीं है कंट्रीब्यूशन टू द जीडीपी के हवाले से. सेकंड आपका जो क्वेश्चन था, आई एम सॉरी, आप अगर रिपीट कर सकें. व्हाट वाज योर सेकंड क्वेश्चन अब्दुल्ला?
जी, मैं दूसरी चीज आपसे ये पूछ रहा था कि व्हाट सपोर्ट इज रिक्वायर्ड टू रिजॉल्व द इशू जो कि आप अभी हाईलाइट कर रहे हैं. क्या इस वक्त गवर्नमेंट क्या कर सकती है एंड हाउ प्राइवेट सेक्टर कैन बी एन इंटीग्रल पार्ट ऑफ इट?
फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आई वुड सजेस्ट कि आप अपने प्लेटफॉर्म से भी और डिफरेंट प्लेटफॉर्म से हम भी ये कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि गवर्नमेंट तमाम डिसीजन मेकिंग में प्राइवेट सेक्टर को ऑन बोर्ड ले. Without taking private sector on board, you are taking the decisions for the private sector and ultimately the business community hurts. For example, these days, the policy rates are as high as 21%, right? And when you go for the borrowing from the bank, then the markup and all things will make it around 24 to 25%. So how can we imagine for the domestic investment? How can we go for the expansion if the borrowing is, it is nearly unavailable? I mean, no businessman would borrow at 25%, right? तो मेरी रिक्वेस्ट ये होगी कि आप अपने प्लेटफॉर्म से भी और बाकी जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं वो भी इस पर नज़रसानी करें कि जो बिजनेस कम्युनिटी है उनको डिसीजन मेकिंग ऑन बोर्ड लेना चाहिए. स्टेट बैंक मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी डिसीजन लेती है, हम 12 अपना इनपुट देते हैं, लेकिन स्टिल जो है वो चीज़ों पे उस तरह अमल नहीं होता. मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉमर्स से भी हमने यही चीज़ डिस्कस की और फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम हम जो जैसे कि दाऊद साहब ने भी कहा कि FTAs PTAs में स्टेक होल्डर्स की इंगेजमेंट उस तरह नहीं है जो होनी चाहिए. प्राइवेट सेक्टर को सब में सिर्फ समझा जाता है. तो हमने अपनी कोशिशों से इस वक्त तो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉमर्स को हमने इस चीज़ पे कायल कर लिया कि GCC की जो ऑनगोइंग नेगोशिएशन है उसमें हम पार्ट एंड पार्सल इनके साथ काम कर रहे हैं. We have provided the entire negotiation framework. We did a widespread stakeholder consultation for getting input on the protection for the domestic industry and the promotion of the export oriented sectors. So we did that. So I also want कि जो दूसरे departments हैं वो भी इसी तरह जो private sector है उनको engage किए बगैर कोई भी decision ना लें. तो मेनली ये मैं चाहूँगा कि अगर गवर्नमेंट को किसी भी हवाले से कोई किसी भी प्लेटफॉर्म पे एडवोकेट किया जाए, so that would be of the interest for the entire country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. Rightly pointed, at this moment, industry is being overburdened by not by taxation, but also keeping in view बाकी जो sectors हैं, they are not being taxed as compared to the industries. उस पे काफी not just नजरसानी, but we have to sit together and come up with a staunch way forward जिससे इन सारे मामलात को हम ease कर सकें, and that will not only resulting in contribution to the GDP, but also in creating a massive a workflow for the people who have been laid down because of the current economic situation. So thank you, Dr. Saab. Moving forward, जी, Dr. Hassan साहब, आपकी थोड़ी रहनुमाई चाहेंगे जी. कीपिंग इन व्यू अगर आप थोड़ा समय बता सकें कि आपने बिल्कुल बजा फरमाया पहले कि इंडस्ट्री इज बीइंग प्रेशर्ड और नो डाउट इन्वेस्टमेंट के ऊपर भी हमें काम करने की जरूरत है, बट हाउ कैन वी मेक द इंडस्ट्री रेजिलिएंट to attain sustainable cross-border trade and improve foreign investment? Just a two-liner from your side, two staunch recommendations would be great.
Okay. लेकिन अब्दुल्ला, सबसे पहले इंडस्ट्री जो होती है आपके मुल्क में, आपके मुल्क का हिस्सा होती है, मुल्क के बाहर तो नहीं होती. आइलैंड्स में तो काम नहीं कर रहे होते हैं. They are working in within your country and along with so जो भी कम मुल्क के अंदर होता है वो उनको इम्पैक्ट करता है. So now let's see कि वो क्या चीज है. सबसे पहले तो आपके प्रीवियस क्वेश्चन से एक छोटी सी एक पॉइंट लेते हुए कि हम सबका क्या ख्याल है कि गवर्नमेंट का क्या काम होना चाहिए, कि क्या काम है गवर्नमेंट का. तो सबसे पहले तो हमने ये देखना है कि वो क्या है, और फिर हम उसके बाद उनसे पूछेंगे कि क्या वो ये काम कर रहे हैं कि नहीं. तो पहला काम मेरे नजदीक ये है कि वो राइट पॉलिसीज और ऐसा इनेबलिंग एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट करें जिसमें लोग अपने पैसे बैंक्स में या सेविंग अकाउंट्स में ना डालें बल्कि इंडस्ट्री की तरफ लेके जाएं. दूसरा गवर्नमेंट का काम ये है कि सिक्योरिटी प्रोवाइड करे, बोथ फिजिकल एंड फाइनेंशियल. और तीसरा गवर्नमेंट का काम ये है जो कि बहुत जरूरी है कि बिजनेस से 2 कदम पीछे ले और प्राइवेट सेक्टर को बिजनेस में 2 कदम आगे या 4 कदम आगे लेने दे. तो ये 3 काम है पहले गवर्नमेंट के करने के. और अगर आप पॉलिटिकल पार्टी, एंड नाउ दैट वी आर मूविंग टुवर्ड्स इलेक्शन आल्सो, तो हमें ये देखना चाहिए कि कौन सी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी इस मैनिफेस्टो पे काम करना चाहती है या कर रही है, और कौन सी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन को प्रमोट करती है, क्योंकि हमने 1.3 मिलियन जॉब्स और
डॉक्टर साहब
4 मिलियन जॉब्स क्रिएट करने हैं. तो अगर हम 2035 तक 4 मिलियन जॉब्स क्रिएट करने का क्या तरीका होता है कि एक्सेप्ट इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन. और हमारा बहुत ज्यादा फोकस समटाइम्स फॉरेन डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट पे होता है. हमारी बीओआईज अब स्ट्रक्चर भी उस तरह हो गई हैं. वो बड़ा अच्छा लगता है टाई सूट पहन के ग्लोरिफाइड इवेंट्स में जाके स्पीकिंग एंड शोइंग वन साइज कट ऑल सॉर्ट ऑफ प्रेजेंटेशंस. लेकिन इस नहीं होता. हमें अगर मुल्क के अंदर चैलेंजिंग इन्वायरमेंट है तो लोग यहाँ पे रह रहे हैं और बस रहे हैं और बिजनेस भी कर रहे हैं, तो हमें उनको सपोर्ट करना चाहिए और इन्वेस्टमेंट, हमारे जो डोमेस्टिक इन्वेस्टमेंट है उसको इनकरेज करना चाहिए. सो ये वो रोल हो गए. अब इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट को रेजिलिएंट कैसे करना है, तो आई थिंक इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट को सबसे पहले, और इसमें एसडीपीआई या एफपीसीसीआई का रोल बहुत है, कि आप सबसे पहले, और मोर इम्पोर्टेंटली एफपीसीसीआई का है, because I'm associated with both these great organizations. I think सबसे पहला रोल ये है कि आप आइडेंटिफाई करें, क्योंकि आप लोगों को एक्सेस होता है अबाउट इंफॉर्मेशन. आप ना सिर्फ नॉलेज शेयरिंग करते हैं, कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग करते हैं, नॉलेज क्रिएशन भी करते हैं. तो उस लिहाज से आप सबसे पहले ये देखें कि आपके पास जॉइंट वेंचर्स की क्या पॉसिबिलिटीज हैं विद अदर कंट्रीज लाइक चाइना. आपके स्कॉलर्स जाते हैं, आप खुद मीटिंग्स वगैरह अटेंड करते हैं, इस तरह के सेमिनार्स भी होते हैं. तो वो जॉइंट वेंचर्स के लिए लाएं, प्रपोजल्स लाएं, ताकि यहाँ पर आप उनका मैरिज करा सकें टुवर्ड विद आवर बिजनेसेस हियर. दूसरा जो ये तो हमारा एस्पेक्ट हो गया. दूसरा एकेडेमिया जो है उसका बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल है, एकेडेमिया लिंकेजेस विद इंडस्ट्री, क्योंकि मैं बहुत ज्यादा देख रहा हूँ और एक हर यूनिवर्सिटी में बने हुए हैं, लेकिन मुझे नहीं पता कि क्या एकेडेमिया और बिजनेस लिंकेजेस एक्चुअली एग्जिस्ट भी करते हैं कि नहीं करते, वो हार्डकोर कंफर्ट जोन्स हैं उनके और उससे वो बाहर नहीं जा रहे, तो वो नॉलेज शेयरिंग वाला पार्ट भी हमें इम्प्रूव करना है। सर जो मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट काम है जो इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट ने करना है, और ये क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ बहुत सारी जो इंडस्ट्रीज हैं ये फैमिली बिजनेसेस, एंड आई एम हैप्पी टू से कि अब नेक्स्ट जनरेशन जो है दे स्टडिंग अब्रॉड, दे हैव एक्सपोजर टू न्यू टेक्नोलॉजी, न्यू आइडियाज, तो वहाँ पे डाइवर्सिफिकेशन आ रही है और हमारे पास बहुत सारे एग्जाम्पल्स हैं। तो जब इसमें वो आगे जाते हैं और वो नई टेक्नोलॉजीज को इम्प्रूव कर रहे हैं, उनसे मेरी ये जरूर रिक्वेस्ट होगी कि अगर एक ब्राजीलियन बनना चाहते हैं तो नेचुरली आप एनवायरनमेंट फ्रेंडली ग्रीन टेक्नोलॉजीज को एम्ब्रेस करें। वो थोड़ी कॉस्टलियर होगी, बट अगर आप उसमें कोई R&D का कंपोनेंट अपने अंदर डाल लें बिजनेस बॉडीज में, तो आई थिंक वो भी एस्पेक्ट को केटर किया जा सकता है। और लास्टली उन्होंने ये करना है कि और अगेन उसके अंदर मेन रोल इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट का खुद भी आता है कि जब भी बजट आने लगे या आए तो गवर्नमेंट पे प्रेशर डालें कि वो क्या चीजें हैं जिन पे उनको असाइश चाहिए या इंसेंटिव्स चाहिए या रेगुलेटरी गिलेटिन पे काम करने की जरूरत है। क्योंकि जब गवर्नमेंट काम करती है रेगुलेटरी गिलेटिन में तो वो उस तरह और उस एम्बिशंस के साथ नहीं करती जिस तरह बिजनेसमैन ने करना होता। सिमिलरली गवर्नमेंट को इनकरेज करें कि वो ऐसी बॉडीज बनाएं जिसके अंदर बिजनेस चेंबर की रिप्रेजेंटेशन अच्छी हो, चाहे वो CPEC के प्लेटफॉर्म में हो, चाहे वो यूरोपियन यूनियन बिजनेस प्लेटफॉर्म में हो, अमेरिकन प्लेटफॉर्म में हो, अफगान या सेंट्रल एशियन ट्रेड बॉडीज हो, उनको फर्दर स्ट्रेंथन करें। तो ये लो हैंगिंग है, इतना मुश्किल काम नहीं है। आप 1 साल के लिए ये विलिंगनेस ले आए, 1 साल की कमिटमेंट शो करें, नारेबाजी कम करें, काम ज्यादा करें, ट्रस्ट में ये सब चीजें हो सकती हैं। सिर्फ 1 साल की एफर्ट चाहिए।
Thank you, Dr. Saab, for your kind remarks. जी, डॉक्टर मिराज साहब, अगर आप थोड़ा सा इस पे हमें गाइड कर सकें कि why Pakistan has a historically low investment to GDP ratio, and what policy measures do you think are required to improve the investment patterns for international trade?
जी अब्दुल्ला साहब, you know that कि इन्वेस्टर अगर वो डोमेस्टिक इन्वेस्टमेंट हो या फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट हो, मोस्टली दे आर टेकिंग रैशनल डिसीजन और वो अपने प्रॉफिट मार्जिन को देखता है कि उनका प्रॉफिट मार्जिन क्या है। प्रॉफिट मार्जिन में अगर आप देख ले तो उनकी पर यूनिट कास्ट को भी देखता है और वो अपने पर यूनिट कास्ट अगेन डिपेंड्स के प्रोविजन ऑफ इनपुट्स क्या है और उनके जो आउटपुट है उनके मार्केट क्या है, उनकी सप्लाई क्या है। तो जिस इकोनॉमीज में देखिए वहाँ पे उनके पर यूनिट कास्ट कम हो, उनके मार्केट हो, उनके सप्लाई के लिए मार्केट ज्यादा हो, या उनके ऐसी environment government and state of the country provide कि वो ऐसे environment provide करें कि वो easy international market को उनके access हो, उनका profit margin ज़्यादा होता है और that why domestic investment भी encourage होता है, foreign investment भी attract। Unfortunately in case of Pakistan जिस तरह पहले ये जिक्र किया कि हमारे कुछ challenges है, fundamental issues है जिसमें energy का मैंने जिक्र किया, political instability। डॉक्टर हसन साहब कह रहे हैं कि दिस इज नॉट इनका कोई लिंक विद इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड, लेकिन मेरे ख्याल में इनडायरेक्टली उनका लिंक ये है कि जहाँ पे पॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी हो, सिक्योरिटी सिचुएशन एज वर्स ऑफ और साथ में इधर की क्राइसिस हो, तो वहाँ पे इन्वेस्टमेंट अगर नहीं है, लेट्स सपोज डोमेस्टिक इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं है, फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं है, तो हाउ यू कैन एक्सपोर्ट एक्सपोर्ट
Dr. Miraj sir. I think we've lost Dr. Miraj sir because of the internet connectivity. Dr. Hassan sahab फरमा रहे थे कि when we leave Islamabad और उससे फिर बाहर जाके 4G and other internet activity disrupted, sir. Even in Islamabad we face the same thing. Moving forward जी, मैं इनको दोबारा ले लूँगा जी डॉक्टर साहब को। I'll come to Akmal Saab. I would request your kind attention and your guidance on what a State Bank of Pakistan is doing to facilitate foreign investors to attract more investment and to increase investment to GDP ratio.
Thank you, Khalid. Abdullah Saab. Actually, State Bank's role, I think my presentation was disrupted due to the internet connection here. The State Bank's role is a more like a facilitator. So in the past few years, State Bank has done, I mean, many circulars, regulations in this direction and helping other organizations as well as the exporters and the investors to bring in to the Pakistan. So State Bank has formulated a regulatory framework to facilitate exporters of goods from Pakistan for the sale through international platforms, business to business consumers. So this was done in July 2021, and I mean, a lot of transactions are being done through this platform, and specifically the IT sector is gaining a lot of benefits from this facility. Then recently, as Dr. Sama has also mentioned about that, the SRO, that about the barter trade, I would like to say one thing about that, that I have seen those products that are included in that SRO. I'm for use for the that will be used for the barter trade with the Afghanistan, Iran, and Russia, and I see the scope is very limited. I mean, the less than $1 billion. We will be able to, although this amount at this point of time, this amount is very big for Pakistan, where we are facing the balance of payment crisis. But I think, and it is only possible if we exploit all these products and how many at HS8 level. But I think the only except Afghanistan, the rest of the trade with Russia and Iran, there is no trade, official trade, and with Russia we have very minimum trade. So while promoting such policies, or I mean, we should also that Dr. Hassan has also mentioned again and again about the, I mean, working. I mean, serious working before we introduce some policy or whatever. I mean, we facilitate. We should also, I mean, do our working on that aspect. We also have introduced the. There are some modernizes foreign exchange regulations to facilitate startups and fintechs. And that specifically SPP, after approval of the federal government, of course, establishment of the holding company abroad. I mean, it is very important that our the presence of our exporters there in where they want to do marketing of their products and their services. So there are now there are the foreign exchange regulations. We have amended those regulations, and the other amendment that we have done is the regulatory instructions that the non-resident rupee value, business value account, that can be facilitated those who are non-resident Pakistanis living abroad and want to open a business account. I mean, that is also initiated by the SPP. So there are also other areas where SPP has done a lot of things in the past. One is the providing, I mean, concessional credits to the exporters, and I think we should we can make it more better than this one, and incentive based, and that can also help the businesses in and exporters in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Akmal sir. Thank you very much. We indeed are in praise of the incentives being provided by State Bank of Pakistan, also the initiatives taken. So we do, keeping in view a comment that we've just received from private sector stakeholders, they have requested that if State Bank of Pakistan could include the private sector when it comes to public-private coordination and partnership, they might be able to provide with staunch recommendations that might be helpful for the State Bank of Pakistan. So moving towards the last round, I would request my speakers, my esteemed panelists, for two staunch policy recommendations, which our team sitting behind the camera will be noting down and will be coming up with a policy report, a policy paper that would be shared with each speaker for their review and comments, and will also be further shared with the esteemed audience who have joined us. So moving towards Dr. Osama, your two recommendations that you think are required to be considered when it comes to cross-border trade and foreign investment. I think we've lost Dr. Osama. So I'll move towards Dr. Hassan Sir. So
Abdullah, did you ask me something?
Yes. I said two staunch recommendations from your side, sir, that are required, that need to be taken into consideration.
I'll give you one. I'll give you one only.
Okay.
The government to take one step back from business and private sector to take 5 steps forward in business. That's my only recommendation.
Duly noted. Dr. Miraj sir, your thoughts on it? What recommendation do you have for the government of Pakistan and also for the private sector when it comes to foreign investment across border trade?
जी अब्दुल्ला साहब थैंक यू मेरे ख्याल में वो जो पहले मैंने बात की ना कि इन्वेस्टर का मोस्टली रैशनल डिसीजन होता है, वो अपने प्रॉफिट मार्जिन को देखता है, अपने परमानेंट कॉस्ट को देखता है। ये डिपेंड करता है अब्जॉर्प्शन कैपेसिटी पे, यानी उनको इनपुट की प्रोविजन क्या है, उनके सप्लाई मार्केट क्या है। तो गवर्नमेंट शुड टेक आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स इस पे काम करना है और उनकी परमानेंट कॉस्ट को कम करना है, उनके यानी मुल्क के अंदर अब्जॉर्प्शन कैपेसिटी को बिल्ड करके, so that way we can attract foreign investment and we can encourage domestic investment.
Thank you very much. Akmal Sahab, any recommendation from your current side that might be helpful for us as well?
जी सर, मेरे ख्याल में जो है फैसिलिटेट प्राइवेट सेक्टर को फैसिलिटेट और एनकरेज करना चाहिए टू अवेल फॉरेन फंडिंग, और इसमें जो उनका मेजर रिस्क है दैट इज एक्सचेंज रेट रिस्क, और वो किसी हद तक गवर्नमेंट को उस कवर करना चाहिए. आई थिंक फर्स्ट थिंग इज दैट इफ यू ब्रिंग इन मोर फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट इन द कंट्री इन द एक्सपोर्ट ओरिएंटेड सेक्टर्स. एंड द सेकंड थिंग दैट आई वुड लाइक टू रिकमेंड, performance based incentive package for exporters. Performance based, that should be there. It's not like that कि एक बड़ा एक्सपोर्टर है तो उसको हमने ज्यादा फैसिलिटेट करना है, हमने परफॉर्मेंस बेस्ड लेके आनी है. उसमें स्मॉल स्केल और मीडियम स्केल है, उसको भी हमने इनकॉर्पोरेट करना चाहिए. सो that these two main recommendations, I mean there are others but these are two main recommendations from my side.
बिल्कुल जी, बजा फरमाया जी, परफॉर्मेंस बेस्ड इंसेंटिव्स होने चाहिए. थैंक यू वेरी मच जी. With this last round we come to the conclusion of our webinar today. I'm thankful to the esteemed panelists who have joined us and also to the audience who had stayed till the end. Your questions are duly noted and we'll be reaching out to you with the responses and also with the policy paper that we are preparing on foreign investment and cross-border trade. And that's all for today. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.